Okay, here are some of the tools that I'll be using or you could be using. Couple drills there. Number 8 by 1.5 inch wood screws. You have your counter sinking set there. We're using, of course, the number 8. Regular drill bits, those are for pilot holes. Of course, tape measure, pencil, a level. That's more to draw a straight line. If you need to, there's the 24-inch square, and you have your assortment of Phillips head screwdrivers and a tape measure, if I didn't mention that. Okay, welcome back. At the end of my basic instructions video, I mentioned an advanced video. I think I'm going to dial that back a little bit and call it an enhanced video. Not so much advanced, but enhanced. So what I've got here is the same cabinet. I've removed the hardware, the doors, door drawer, the slides. And we're going to assume this is where we are in the process. So I can show you, if you want to make these enhancements, how easy they would be. I'm choosing to make those enhancements kind of for peace of mind, and I'll kind of explain as I go. So that said, the first thing I want to do is stop the camera. We're gonna flip the cabinet around, and we're gonna start in the on the back panel. So that's what we're gonna do now. Okay, so we flipped the carcass around, and I want to call your attention first to this screw. You remember we put this screw in, provided by the company, to secure the bottom shelf, or the bottom of the cabinet. I put the gauge on it. This is a number 7 screw, 1.25 inch. What I'm going to be using in my enhanced video here is number 8's, 1.5 inches and 2 inches. And I'll be using the pilot guide to do that into countersink. Now this one doesn't need countersunk because it's the back of the cabinet, and it'll sit flush enough to the back. Okay, so the idea here, on this, just to give you a quick overview of this enhancement, is you have the cams, right? And they're holding things in place pretty well. Some people would even maybe put glue in the data, in the cutouts, the datas, before they put the cams in. Glue to me is a little messy. It's a little permanent in case you decide something's not right. I'm going to use screws. So every time I have a cam, I'm going to put 2 screws. So 2 screws here, 2 here. I'm going to bring 2 more here, 2 and 2, and then I'll repeat to the front as well. So now the question is, how do I put the screws in? Well, as I showed you earlier, you could certainly use a square, and before you put that screw in, you could put your square up here. You could draw a line with your pencil, and you could say, okay, there's where the board's going to be, and you could do your holes prior to putting in your shelf. Or you could do it the way I'm going to do it, and I want to show you that. But in order to show you that, I've got to break this completely down, and then I'm going to do my holes, and then we're going to reassemble. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to break this down and then be right back. Okay, so we've got the back of the cabinet off, but again, let's assume that it's never been on, and you're going to do this enhanced version. So what I've done is I've taken my 24-inch square, and I just did a line down through the middle here, right through the existing hole, the one that comes factory drilled. And now I've marked 3 inches in on either side, and I just arbitrarily pick 3, 2.5, 3.5, 4, whatever. And I'm going to drill basically a pilot hole. So I'm going to do that now. And I'm going to do one on this side as well. Okay, so all I need to do, now remember, be careful of this, and you might even want to do this before you put those on, is all I need to do is to be able to see those holes from the back side. Okay, now in retrospect, because of this piece here, I probably should have come in a little bit. It's a little bit chipped. That's my mistake. It's on the back. No one's going to see it. but that was probably a faux pas, me not measuring from the backside. So maybe 3.5, 3, 4, probably maybe come in to do 4, or maybe on 2. Again, so it's not life or death. I mean, it's just a little chip. It's not going to matter. I'm going to put a screw through this anyway. So maybe on this side, because I'm so close, I think maybe we better redo this. So I'm going to flip it over. I don't want to be there, so that happens in live versions. I'm going to come in a little bit and get off that seam. So there's my oopsie for the day, maybe. Or conversely, you could decide to come over this way. So let's just do both, and then I'll make a decision later. Just do them both. Okay, now we're going to go back to the assembly process, and I'll show you why we drill these holes where we drilled them. Okay, so this is either side of the cabinet. And remember, we want to make some more secureness. So we're going to pick 2 points, and we're going to drill right through the middle of this groove the same way we did for the back of the cabinet. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to just do the holes. Do those real fast. I've already measured them. I've just come in about 4 or 5 inches on either side. I'd stay a little bit away from the toe kick. So I just came in maybe 3 inches on this side, 4, maybe 3 or 4, 5, maybe 4, 5.5, whatever. So here, I'm just going to go down and make the hole. Hole 1. Hole 2. Now, when we reassemble the cabinet, this is where my pilot holes are going to go in my countersinks right here. See, I've already got them measured, right? So the next thing you're going to see is when we put the cabinet together, I'm going to show you the countersinks and then the screws. So there you go. And I've reattached this number 7 1.25 inch screw back to its regular place. Now, if you see where I drilled my holes, I wasn't really paying much attention. So again, learn from my mistake, right? Not that it's a big deal, but I put a hole right on this seam. Probably not the best place to put a screw. So I decided, remember we said we can go in a little bit or we can go out a little bit. In fact, you could even put more if you wanted. I think one on each side would be enough. So I think what I'm going to do is use, since I'm going to be putting screws over here and over here, I'm going to use the ones over here. So I'm going to use these here. So I'm going to countersink this one right here. I'm going to countersink this one right here. And since we're here, I went ahead and marked the next side. Okay, so now here's the cam. I told you I was going to put a screw on either side of the cam, right? So I've marked this a couple inches above, a couple inches below. No problem on the bottom because there's no running into the shelf bracket, the slide bracket. So here you can see I've marked it one close to the cam, and then I've given quite a bit of distance above, a couple inches above the shelf bracket, because we don't want to run into that shelf bracket when we come this way. So because I assemble upside down, it's very easy to measure where that bracket is and then just make sure you're not hitting it. Now, if you roll the camera over this way, again, this doesn't have to be a critical thing, but you see I've marked this here. That's the 5/8. That's the thickness of the wood. So I've marked all 4 places, and all I have to do is just go down the middle of this 5/8, because that's where I want the pilot to be. So I've attached my countersinking tool for the 8-inch, for the number 8 1.5 inch, set the appropriate depth. We're going to do a countersink. I'm going to do all these holes, and then we're going to attach the screws, and I'll show you kind of what the end process is. And then we're going to repeat on the other side, and then we're going to repeat on the face side. We'll do that separately. I don't believe we need anything on the toe kick side. I think with everything else we're doing, I think we're fine here. So I'm not going to try to finagle inside and worry about this 1/4 inch gap, and I'm just going to let that go. So I'm going to do one here live, and then we're going to do the rest off camera and then put the screws in. So I decided I was going to use these holes here. So here we go. And I expect this to be a little dirty, a little muddy, if you will. But it's the back of the cabinet. No one's going to see it. The sides are going to have skins or it's going to be up against another cabinet. So any kind of a, a routed hole that's not perfect, it really just doesn't matter. So here we go. Actually, that turned out pretty good. All right, let me make sure that my screw is going to get in there and be countersunk. Make sure I went far enough. Yeah, maybe just go a little bit more. Little bit. All right, top of the screw. Yep, that's perfect. Now remember, the back isn't as critical as the sides, but it's a good place to practice. The sides are more critical because you're going to either have a skin on one side or it's going to be up against the cabinet, and you don't want this screw head sticking out. So there you go. That's pretty perfect. We're going to go off camera, get these done, come back, show you kind of where we are, and then we'll flip it over and we'll do the front. Okay, so we're back. I'm putting in the last screw. You can see a little bit of a mess there with the router, or the not router, but routing out that hole. Okay, so screws in. I'm into the side. I told you before I like to use a manual screwdriver. I like to just feel the tension. And we're going to countersink. And look at that, baby. That is flush as you need to be right there. Flush, flush. Actually, these are even just a little bit in flush. It's the reason why I'm using 1.5 inches instead of 2 inches, because this is always going to take it just a little bit further. And there you go. There's my enhanced version. What'd that take? An extra couple minutes per side. I'm okay with that. You can see these are sunk. Again, this is my cosmetic mistake. It will affect nothing. There's the company hole uncountersunk, but that's fine. You could countersink that one if you wanted. There's the second one. So that shelf is then extra secure. Now we're going to turn the camera off, do the other side, flip it, and then we'll do the front ones as well. Okay, so here we are. I've already put this one in. Now I'm going to do this one. Flush, flush, and it's repeat for the other side. There you go. Let's move on. Okay, so here we are back at the front of the cabinet, upside down, the way I prefer to assemble. And it'll be a little more obvious here in just a second. So remember now what we're doing on this side and on the other side is going to be to put 2 screws on either side of the cams, right? Okay, so where are the cams? I can't see them, right? So I know I've got the thickness between here and here. I don't know what that is. Then I got the thickness of the board. Then I have to figure out where the cam is. Too much math. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to, because it's upside down and everything is flush to the bottom, I can just measure up from the bottom. Well, it'd be the top, but come up. Okay, so if I put my tape measure up here and I just eyeball this, I can see that there's a cam at about 5 and say, yeah, it's about right at 5. Okay, here, right on the side of the cabinet, 5 inches. Next cam is at about 25 and a quarter. All right, 25 and a quarter. All right, now, what else do I have to know? What we're drilling into, this second part of the face frame, I believe, if I measured it last time correctly, 3/4 of an inch. I'm sorry, 1.25 inches, sorry. Yeah, so we have 1.25 inches for my depth. Okay, so that means if I have 1.25 inches, and then I have 5/8 inches of this, I've got well over 2 inches, so I'm clear. That's good, no problem. Okay, now, I also have to know how thick this is. This is where the 3/4 of an inch, I believe, comes in. Yes, 3/4 of an inch. So I have the thickness now of 3/4 of an inch. All right, well, since I'm marking up the side of my cabinet, we'll just keep marking it up. 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so what do I know? I know that from the bottom, I'm going to come up 5 inches and find my cam. So if my cam is 5 inches from the bottom, right there, and I know that my width of my faceplate is 3/4 of an inch, I'm going to mark 3/4 of an inch. Let's do this a little more efficiently. let's do 3/4 of an inch, just like we did on the other one. We know that I've got this much room to play with. Okay, well, if that's 5, I don't want 5. I'm going to want maybe here, maybe here. All right, same thing. What did I say this was? 25 1/4. 25 1/4. So we know the cam is right there. Okay, the center of the cam is right there. All right, 3/4 of an inch thickness to play with, which is more than 5/8, by the way, obviously. So that's nice. So we got 3/4 of an inch here, 3/4 of an inch here. That's 5 or 25 1/4. So maybe here, maybe here. As long as I'm within this, right, and try to keep it centered. So there's my holes. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to still use the 1.5 inch screw, so I don't have to change my drill bit. So we're going to drill these out, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to secure them. Okay, I'm going to show you this last one. I've got my pencil mark, and I've got my trusty old shop rag, and I'm protecting the outside of the face frame. Even though I've got plenty of room, I'm just not going to take any chances. So I've got a nice firm grip on this rag. I've got my drill. Here we go. And the proper way to do this, as I understand it, is in. Okay, you start your hole. I normally go a little bit deeper to show you. So the question is, did I go far enough? You take your head, and you can see it doesn't quite fit in the hole yet. Doesn't quite fit. So I'm going to take my drill, and I'm going to go again. Just a little bit more. Take my head, and yes, now my head is in there. All right, so let's find out. Live at 5. Screwdriver. Oh, dropped it. Okay, Sandy, you ready? Okay, here we go. Okay, grabbing good, grabbing good, grabbing good, grabbing good, and feel snug, and look, countersunk. Again, skin's going to be over top of this, and the cabinet's going to be up next to it. That's a perfect hole in my opinion. Let's see if I did this one correctly. Ooh, this one's going to be kind of close, but I think we're all right. Could have always... Yep, that's fine, that's fine. That's as long as you've got, yep, that's it. Okay, we're going to do these other two, and then we're going to do the other side. We're going to flip it over, and then we'll do a summation. And there's one last thing that I'm going to do. I'll call that a surprise. Okay, something that was in my head but wasn't quite out in the video until this point is, remember, you need to put your door glide or your drawer glides on, and you have to decide which part of this cabinet is going to be your hinges, right, for your doors. So when I did this side, I knew the hinges were on the other side, and I wasn't paying much attention to where these are going to be mounted. I also knew that I had the glides, and I was pretty sure I was going to clear those. So don't use my measurements for your cabinets. Just understand the process of where to put the hole. So what I'm saying is, you need to know where these holes are going to be, because you don't want them running into each other from opposite sides. So we're going to show you how we did it before we were on camera. So we're going to pause the video. Okay, so this is the hinge side. The screwdrivers you see protruding are where our screw holes are going to be. We know where that is, right? So we have to put our screws from the sides above and below these marks. So that's what we're going to work for, below this mark and above this mark. Now, same thing for this. This one won't matter, because it's, unless you want to put one in the middle, which is, you could, I guess, but I'm not going to. This one doesn't matter because it's too far away. But down here, you have to be aware of the drawer glide. Okay, so the drawer glide's a little tighter, so you've got to be above and below the drawer guide, which is going to be a little bit, more of a tightness. So you just want to give yourself, so we know it's about here, and we know the cam is just a little below that. So instead of doing like on the other side, I've got my 3/4 marked. I may be a little lower, I may be a little higher. Just make sure you give yourself at least an inch from where these holes are. So we're going to go ahead and do these sides, get those marked up, and we'll show you how it turned out. Okay, so here's the final product. We know where the cam is. We know where the other screws are going to be. So don't mimic my exact measurements, mimic my process. So just to recap, you need to find where your hinges are going to go. We've covered that in the basic installation video. But you don't have to put them in. You can just mark them with a pencil. You don't have to put them in. You remember there's the popsicle stick trick. Just mark them. Mark where your glides are going to go. Remember we talked about that. They just go right up against the back. They go all the way in. They go flush. Just mark them, and then you'll know where those holes are going to be, so you don't run into them. So this one kind of lines up with the cam. So we're a little above, a little below. This one has really, there's no real interference here. So these were fine. Okay, but again, do the process, not my measurements. Okay, so I have one last thing I'm going to throw at you. We're going to take this cabinet, right side it, and we're back to finish this off. Okay, here we are, bottom of the 9th. We're about finished. We have turned the cabinet up so you can see it, and I'm just going to show you that there's no imperfections here. There's nothing that we did that causes any of this to be bubbled or split or cracked or whatever. It's all just as smooth as it was before we started, and that's obviously the goal. So we're all tight. It's all good. And this is the last bit. Remember I told you in the basic installation video that I hadn't put these in? Well, I knew I was going to be doing this advanced video. So now I'm just going to add these pieces here to each corner, put the glides back in, put the hinges back on, reset everything, and we'll be finished. See you in a minute. Okay, so I've got 3 brackets in. This is the 4th one. The way I tend to do this is hold it in place, take your drill, and we're just going to put right in the middle, a little starter hole, put the drill aside, grab your screw. Then what I do, I just put the screw through the bottom hole, grab my screwdriver, put it in like this, find my hole, just let it bring it in, let it bring it in, let it bring it in, let it bring it in. I go all the way tight. That now sets it. Grab my drill and just real quickly the rest of the pilot holes. Just remember, you can't go through the side. Just getting it started. And now the last 3. And I tend to go opposite, but it doesn't really matter. Nice and easy. With the thickness of the bracket and the screw, you're never going to go through the side. That's, of course, by design. Tight. And here we go. Okay. All right, so just do final thoughts. We'll just come up here, I guess. Just go get on one knee, I guess. Ready? Okay, that's fine. I can cut it. Okay, so final thoughts. If I was doing this for the first time and I hadn't done the doors yet, and I hadn't done, the hinges and all that, of course you're going to do that. You're going to do it like we did in the installation video. But when it comes time to install the cabinet in its final resting spot, I'm pulling those pieces off and I'm going to put them back on later, because we may be joining the cabinets together for stability on the run. You may have to whatever, just get it the way you want it. So here you go. I mean, this is it. This is the process. You got everything is the way it needs to be. Finish it off, and it's been a great experience. This is my first cabinet. This is my learning cabinet, my experimental cabinet. But I believe the same basic process is just going to be repeated about 17 or 18 more times, and that's me putting together the cabinet. And of course, my wife is also helping quite a bit off camera and running the camera, so we appreciate that. Thanks again to everybody, including Rich out there at RTA Wholesalers. I'll see you in the next video.